Hi, everyone. My name's Tom Kirkham. I am founder and CEO of Kirkham Iron Tech. And what Kirkham Iron Tech does or is a managed security service provider. That's what the company is, in the industry. That's what it goes by. And the reason that's important is, as you will see, is you need to consult with a security expert. This is no longer do it yourself, if it ever really was. But especially now that we have these AI threats and this sheer scale of the automation or the bots that are automatically building out targeted spear phishing and other types of attack. The world has changed. The game has changed. About 6 or 7 years ago, the NSA was hacked, and their offensive cyber warfare tools were stolen, such as the Stuxnet virus we used to damage Iran's nuclear enrichment centrifuges. But now, since ChatGPT and other AI is out there, those artificial intelligent bots can scrape websites, gather intelligence automatically, and then spew out 100,000, a million different emails, for example, that appear to be highly targeted. Might be from you to someone else in your organization. Let's get started. So a little bit about me. Got a couple of books on Amazon about cyber security. And the most important thing, or what seemingly is the most interesting thing for most people, is that I'm on an ISIS kill list. 2015, the FBI visited me in my office. I think it was July 3rd, and proceeded to tell me that your name, address, phone number, all sorts of other personal information, place of employment, and everything is on this kill list. And if you remember, in 2015 or thereabouts, there were a lot of kill lists issued. Most of them were military, political, law enforcement type targets, mostly in New York Metro and Washington Metro. But there was one list that was seemingly random, scattered out all over the United States, potential victims. And that's the list I was on. Later research led me to believe that it was a random hack of a database. That's it. There's nothing in my background. Cybersecurity has nothing to do with it. It was simply a method whereby ISIS was tying up law enforcement and creating chaos. And they used this hack database that had my name and personal information on it for one of those lists. So sometimes these hacks can be even more important than a loss of money or downtime and other things like that. Let's look at some seminal events in hacking. 91 saw the Michelangelo virus. This was in the days when it was done for bragging rights. Michelangelo had nothing to do with making money. It just scrambled the contents of the disk upon boot up on Michelangelo's birthday. 2000 saw I love you virus. This was the first time email was used to distribute viruses. 07 was a storm worm. This introduced botnets. Stuxnet, like I mentioned, and actually the NSA is on in this deck twice. Number one, they produced Stuxnet. It was successful. Iran did not know for months and months and months, no one really knows how long, that this virus was in there actually damaging the centrifuges. It was cleverly done, and the NSA designed it to where it would only execute in that air-gapped environment. That facility was not connected to the internet, by the way. 2017, this really brought home, although ransomware had been around for quite some time, this one really brought it home that this is a true large-scale global threat. And then in 2020, we began to see AI-driven cyber attacks. And especially about a little over a year ago, January, February of 23, we really started seeing them experimenting and the criminals developing their craft. The NSA, I mentioned this earlier, that the Stuxnet virus is now out in the wild, along with the source code. The NSA themselves were breached. That tool, along with others, were stolen, and all the source code. And criminals and others can download it for free and modify it as they see fit. And Stuxnet, along with others, are being used against us each and every single day. In 2020, or actually it started in 19, we saw the largest attack on the U.S. government at that time. And I don't think there's been one as big since, but it could be. And this was a SolarWinds attack. Interestingly, the agencies that were protected with a class of product that's called EDR, or more technically managed EDR, did not suffer a breach. It was only the ones that were not protected about it and by it. And I'm going to talk more about it because that's something very specific you need to know to get your security prepared for modern day threats. And then finally, this just happened in February. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency was breached by some zero-day vulnerabilities in their VPN. So this history, this walking through and talking about how long this has been around and how it's been escalating, this we all know. Because Hollywood presents this to us, all of these movies. War Games, 1982. Sneakers, early mid 90s, I think. Robert Redford, Ben Kingsley, Sidney Poitier. And these other hacking movies, Hollywood's been using this, and most of these are pretty good. Mr. Robot, more recently, that's a full out series on hacking, and the cyber pandemic idea that we have to worry about. But most recently, Netflix released Leave the World Behind. And this is by the creator of Mr. Robot, Sam Esmail. And this movie it's a character study, but it is the best representation of what I think a major cyber war attack on the United States will look like. And there's some lessons to be learned from this. You've got to expect the unexpected. You've got to prepare by defending properly. You actually need to use artificial intelligence in your defense, and that makes it a double-edged sword. But most importantly, you've got to understand what's the human element in all of this. What's the human element from a threat actor? What's their motivations, their objectives? Why are they doing this? What about your own vulnerabilities in your firm when it comes to simply being aware and being vigilant about protecting, not clicking on email attachments that are malicious, and understanding that AI is going to be used against them to con the victim into unleashing an attack in your network? But the concept of a major cyber attack is not new. One of the first people that began talking about it is Klaus Schwab, who's the CEO, the founder of the World Economic Forum. I don't have time to go into his credentials, but let's just say he might be one of the smartest men on the planet. And he, shortly after COVID, he did a speech where he was talking about this threat is real. And we need to learn lessons from the COVID crisis to prepare for a major cyber attack. because a major global cyber attack, such as that represented in that next Netflix film, has the potential to make COVID look like a speed bump, a minor annoyance. A book that came out a couple of years ago by Nicole Perlroth, who is the cybersecurity reporter for the Wall Street Journal, goes into a lot of detail behind the scenes, into the dark alleys of the criminal and nation state hacking community, and it's the effects it's had on politics, the terrible cyber war that Ukraine went through, and that's long before what we see now with kinetic warfare. Russia stopped just short of killing people, and they did it as a test run, just to demonstrate what they could do from cyber war perspective. And then most recently, oops, sorry about that. Most recently, I authored this book, and it's How to Survive a Cyber Pandemic, um, a worldwide cyber war. And the techniques that's in this book is the very same things you need to do just to protect your firm. Okay? This is normal stuff. This is not secret stuff. Everyone in the industry, any InfoSec professionals or cybersecurity expert will tell you these are the tactics, techniques, the technical controls, the policies, and the procedures that you need to implement to protect your firm, your clients, your employees, yourself. Maybe some of you, it may be even be your community or your state, or maybe you do national work. And you're going to learn a lot of those things today. So one of the things that I've discovered over the years is even experts in the community, the good guys in the hacking community, the white hats, right? They don't understand, many of them do not understand the sheer size and scale of hacking. Most hackers these days are very, very specialized. Imagine a major hospital in your area and just think about all the different specialties under the roof of that hospital. Cardiologists, rheumatologists, registered nurses, phlebotomists, the list goes on and on and on. The community is huge, and these different specialties, such as being a ransomware attacker, require special skills. This is not amateur hour anymore. These attacks are not done, or rarely done, for bragging rights. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry globally. And the attacks that you don't hear about, which is the majority of the attacks, they're typically done at scale. They're high volume, and now they're AI driven or bot driven. So what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, they're fully automated. And let's say it's a ransomware attack, and they're using email as the vector. And maybe they have a list of all of the CPAs in the state of New York and the email addresses. Well, the ransomware attacker just spews out an email, and it looks like it's from a vendor you might use, maybe from Intuit or something like that. And they carefully craft the message that says, attached are the invoices that are outstanding for your account. If we don't receive payment immediately, we're going to close the service down. And there's a spreadsheet attached to the email. And they're thinking in terms of conversion rates. They don't know who you are. They don't care who you are. They're in it for the money. So let's say there's 100,000 emails at this, 100,000 potential victims, and only 1% become actual victims of this ransomware attack. That's 1,000 victims. And let's say they collect $10,000 per victim. That's a $10 million payday for the ransomware hacker and his hacking colleagues that provide a 24/7 help desk to aid the victim into obtaining Bitcoin to pay the ransom. Or maybe they're having a technical problem after they paid the ransom and the files aren't unencrypting. They have other hacker colleagues that they've paid for the services of a clean email server, a server that's never been known to send out attacks, or clean encryption server, one that's never been known to serve as an encryption server. And they just slice the pie up out of that $10 million. But these attacks are fully automated. In fact, the ransomware attacker themselves, they don't even have to write a line of code. They can go on the dark web and buy a software program to automate the entire attack. Point and click ransomware attack building. And these things, you know, I've already used the example of the $10 million payday, but there was, I think about 3 or 4 years ago, a worldwide ransomware attack that grossed 3.5 billion with a B. The two masterminds behind it purportedly made $250 million each, and the rest of it was split up among the other specialists that provided goods and services to make the attack successful. $3.5 billion. And the trend is not stopping or slowing down, it's accelerating. Now, depending on the research, this particular one from Cybersecurity Ventures said that the worldwide cybercrime industry was a little over $8 trillion in 23. I've seen other estimates that go up over 9 trillion, and it's expected to be 9 or 10 trillion this year, and on and on and on. In fact, if it were a country, it would be the third largest economy in the world. I can't stress this enough. It is high volume. So if any of you are thinking, why would somebody want to attack me? I don't have any big important clients, or I'm in a little small town in the middle of nowhere. Why would I show up on anybody's radar screen? Well, the same reason that I'm on an ISIS kill list. Your email is in a database somewhere, or probably thousands of databases somewhere. And all it takes is that database to be breached. It probably already has been. You're probably already on an email list. You know, fortunately, we do a really good job of blocking this with spam filters and other tools and techniques. But the simple fact of the matter is spam filters aren't perfect. And they are always working on trying to improve their conversion rates, such as, can the email be delivered? What's the reputation of the email server? It's a highly specialized industry, and it's huge. So this is the title is a little misleading, but it says who's behind the cyber attacks. And so to me, that would imply the nation state of China or Russia's behind it. But what this is really saying is, where are they? The vast majority of the criminals are in Russia. There's quite a few in China as well, and then a few just scattered around in other countries. And it's in Russia's, or specifically Vladimir Putin's, best interest to coddle these criminal hackers, because their interests frequently align, such as the Ukrainian cyber war that I mentioned earlier. That was several years before, or a few years before, this kinetic war that's going on. Basically, Putin said to all the criminal hackers, attack at will, just don't have any fallout with Mother Russia. Concentrate only on Ukraine. So they designed the attacks to only execute if the language on the computer was set to Ukrainian. Now, these different types of threat actors have different objectives, such as in China. Not only do they have the regular geopolitical motivations, such as Russia and Iran and, frankly, the United States, but particularly in China's case, they've spent the last 30 years stealing intellectual property. And all it takes is a visit to a modern Chinese city these days, and you can see that you can't go from third world to more advanced than a lot of Western democratic cities in 30 years. You just can't do it without stealing intellectual property. Cyber criminals, it's all about the money. Hacktivists, such as Anonymous, they've got ideological things. Terrorist groups, same thing, but it's violence, such as an ISIS kill list. And then thrill seekers, those are the aforementioned, bragging rights. And then finally, you do have to worry about insider threats, but the one thing about insider threats is almost all attacks due to an insider is because the insider failed to detect that this is a scam. In other words, most insider threats are non-malicious insiders. And the reason for that is simple. If it is a malicious insider, they almost invariably get caught. It's just too easy to get caught as an insider. But the main threat actors you really have to worry about for most of you is the criminals and the nation states. So these are just some of the things that we've seen that's been happening using AI related attack styles or bots. We've seen deep fake video and audio using, like, if any of you receive your voicemail in an email attachment, that's what I do. Those can be faked. Any videos can be faked. The big one is the AI powered spear phishing. So that means, remember that email campaign that went out, or the ransomware campaign that I talked about earlier, that 100,000 people? In the past, it was a generic message. But now they have the ability, by going out and crawling LinkedIn and the internet and your website, they can tailor the messages to improve their conversion rates. They can see someone works for Tom. I'll make this email from Tom, and it's a direct report to Tom. And I'll ask them to open this file attachment right away, because this is serious if we get shut off from this vendor's services. They can do that at scale. Imagine those 100,000 emails going out, and every single one of them are automated through bots and AI to improve the conversion rate. It's going to be a lot higher. We're seeing a lot of intelligence itself into botnet attacks. We've been seeing automated social engineering. That's a big deal with nation states. Russia and China has been tinkering with social unrest and social chaos with Western nations for 8 or 9 years now. But the big one is that AI-based targeted attacks. They did not invest. We've been, as a company, and me personally, I've been on a targeted list for years, and the company has too. And in the past, they had to commit human resources, human energy into doing research and to crafting the emails. I mean, it was a very targeted rifle shot type of attack. And they would not do that unless it was a lucrative target. But now they can do it to everyone without investing that time, money, and energy and research. Just let AI do it. The social engineering psychological manipulation. And you need to be on the lookout for this, especially those of you that spend a lot of time on social networks, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. They're looking to influence, and they're using these types of techniques: social proof and herd behavior, sense of urgency. Everyone has confirmation biases, using that against you depending on your interest. They're spreading misinformation and disinformation. Sometimes it appears like it's an authority. And emotional appeals like, doesn't this just burn you up? The longer you stay on those sites, the more money those sites make. And hackers are using that against us. So what's at risk if you suffer a breach? Well, your reputation and your respect. I believe that all states now require reporting of a breach, so it's probably going to get out. It's likely you're going to be subject to fines by someone, if not multiple regulatory industries. And other non-compliance fallout, if you have an insurance claim and you check the wrong box on the application. I've heard that up to 40% of cyber insurance claims, and this may be old, but up to 40% went unpaid because the industry was getting hammered. And so they look for any loophole. So if you accidentally thought you had something in place that you didn't, and the fact that you did not have that policy in place or that tool in place and you suffered a breach, it's likely they're going to deny the claim. You're going to have a productivity loss no matter what happens in the event of an actual security event. Probably revenue losses. Those of you that bill by the hour or maybe by the project, you're not productive during the middle of a breach, especially if the whole firm is shut down. May not be able to make payroll, pay other bills. Well, the big one, I think, for most of us, is the release of client data. Their emails that can be used to attack them, their personal, private information, financials. The fact of the matter is, what we know is due to these and other um, points, and the numbers depend on the survey. And I've seen surveys that basically range to 40 to 60% of businesses close up within 6 months to 2 years of an attack because they can't overcome these things. They can't overcome the fines, the loss of reputation. How much value to your firm is your respect and reputation, your goodwill? Now, I know, and I think the last slide says this, that it's 4 to 5 times cheaper to defend against a possible attack than it is to actually respond to an actual attack. But when you're considering that your business it could be a fatal attack, how do you put a price on that? So, what kind of mistakes do we see when we go into accounting firms and law firms and manufacturing firms that aren't properly protected? Well, a lot of it is a lack of understanding the risk to the company, both from a management and a leadership perspective. Now, when you get done with this, you won't be guilty of that. You shouldn't be already. The things that I've talked about and the doom and gloom and the things like that, I frequently get accused of fear mongering. But the reality of it is, I have underestimated the size and the scope of the threat. But you got to understand the risk to your firm that you can have an attack. Over reliance on antivirus. Antivirus is a 30-plus-year-old technology created before Michelangelo virus, I might add. And it's based upon virus definition files. That's not good enough. You know, the NSA cyber warfare tools are specifically designed to evade any kind of virus detection. In fact, a modern day ransomware attack, in its purest sense, has no virus. Everything's built into Windows and Microsoft Office or Mac stuff, right? Antivirus is no longer effective. If you can buy it off the shelf at Best Buy, Office Depot, or Amazon for that matter, that's not effective. It's not best in class at all. We see a lot of firms failing to monitor and periodically testing their backup because oh, well, if we get a ransomware attack, we'll just restore the data from backup and not pay the ransom. Now, there's a couple of problems with that. Number one is if you're not monitoring it and periodically testing it, you don't have a backup. You've got a hope and a wish that it's going to be there when you need it. Second of all, if it's just a backup to an external hard drive hanging off the server via a USB cable, chances are good that the backup itself is going to be encrypted. We see this failure all the time, and that's why I've stressed in the very beginning, understand the names of the organizations. Managed security service provider. That's different than an MSP, managed services provider. The managed security services provider, the concentration's on security. Security's job one, and it should be job one in your firm. Your investment in IT is to hit the bottom line positively. You know, improve productivity, efficiency, increase profits, and a myriad of other objectives with your investment in IT. Your investment in security is to make sure an event doesn't happen, or if an event does happen, which it will, it'll be a non-event. We dodged that one because we put our security stuff in place. If we hadn't done that, it would have been catastrophic. This one just blows my mind. If you do nothing but implement continuous cybersecurity awareness training in your organization, you will cut your risk. It's mathematical, it's research supports it. You will cut it in half because 95% of successful breaches are caused by human error. It's that non-malicious insider that's just trying to do their job, making sure the vendors are paid. Certainly, they would not want these services to be turned off because of some sort of mistake. And there seems to be a sense of urgency in this email to open this attachment and look at the outstanding invoices. And they unleash a ransomware attack. And there's others, pop-ups from websites that look like they're from Microsoft, saying your computer's infected, and other compromised websites that mislead and scam the user into letting the criminals inside the network. 95%. That should surprise most of you because the first time I heard this years ago, it surprised me. And since you guys got the polling going on, we'll skip on past this. All right, so let's talk about defense. You should look for organizations or a consultant that recommends a defense in depth. Okay, defense in depth. That means you're going to surround everything that you're protecting with layers of defense. And you're going to fight AI with AI. Now, that last bullet point there is endpoint detection and response, or EDR. That's a class of product that is head and shoulders better than an antivirus. And the primary reason is that best in class EDRs or XDRs, it kind of goes by different names and they're always changing. That's kind of why you need to consult with somebody. But what that product does, what that class of product does, is it looks at what the computer is doing and executing and what the user is doing and executing. And based upon its knowledge, its intelligence, what it's seen in the past on these attack storylines, it can predict an imminent attack and freeze it. And the best ones can roll back a successful attack. That's the only modern tool that can prevent a ransomware attack these days. If you want specific names, I currently think, at the time of this recording, I currently think SentinelOne and CrowdStrike are the two best EDRs out there. You're not going to find them on the shelf at Best Buy or from Amazon. They're only able to be obtained through a security company, an InfoSec company, because they require proper configuration, deployment, management, and most importantly, monitoring and response. So this is basically it. And so if your firm is relying on the latest Norton McAfee Bitdefender Internet Protection Suite LifeLock thingy that for $30 you can put it on 10 computers a year, it's not adequate. Modern day threats will just blast right on past that off-the-shelf consumer grade defense. It's got to be an EDR of some type, hopefully one of those two that I just mentioned. We're a SentinelOne partner. It hasn't failed us. We've never had a client have a successful breach since we required EDRs to be installed. I hope I'm always able to say that. But if the NSA can be breached, anyone can be breached. There's no guarantees. If a consultant tells you if you do these things, you're 100% protected, they are wrong. My objective today, and what your objective should be, is to get from, say, just to throw out a number, a 10% chance in any given year your firm will suffer a security event. You want to get that down to 0.01 or 0.001% chance by implementing things like security awareness training, implementing that class of product known as EDR, implementing that defense in depth strategy, and other things that a good security consultant is going to recommend. It will drop your risk down to near zero, as close as you can get it. And then you understand what the risk is to your firm. Now, what we're seeing more and more is the growth of the industry. This is not going away anytime soon. Those of us that live in the United States, some of us wonder, well, why doesn't the U.S. government do something about it? They can't. No more so than the police can protect you at 3 a.m. in the wrong alley in New York, or even where you live, even where I live. They can't be everywhere all the time. And 95% of the money that the U.S. government spends on cyber warfare is offensive. So what else do you want to look for when you're talking to a security advisor? One of which I believe is a gold standard, the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. It's the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. This framework has been around for years, and it references all other types or many other types of international standards when it comes to cybersecurity, such as ISO or COBIT 5 or regulations inside your industry, the IRS guidelines. What is it, 4557? It is based in part on principles that NIST put into the cybersecurity framework. And this framework is composed of 6 things. Number one is you've got to identify. That means you've got to know the risk to your firm, which hopefully by now you understand it's higher than you may have realized. But then you need to go a step further. What are our vulnerabilities? What is it that gives us this 10% chance in any given year of having a successful attack? Captain's got to know the condition of a ship before he sets sail. Got to know the route, crew experience, condition of the engines, the navigation systems, radios, cargo, before he sets on a 6-week journey across the ocean. Now, once you know these vulnerabilities and these weaknesses in your firm's defense, now you got to change it. You got to protect. It's the second part of NIST CSF. And once you do that, you have to put in place an intrusion detection system and an intrusion response plan. Automated and human. That means you've got to engage and have engaged InfoSec professionals. Now, many, many years ago, this type of defense only Fortune 500 companies could afford. But just like the bad guys scale their services and their attacks through automation and bots and just sheer numbers, the good guys do that too. So all of our clients are protected by layers of InfoSec experts, former NSA employees, former U.S. Cyber Command that've been in the trenches, and they are there to investigate and respond to anomalies, security anomalies. And it's affordable. Don't think it's not. And what's your business worth? The fifth part of the NIST CSF is you've got to have a recovery system. That's that backup that I mentioned earlier. You also need to plan for business continuity and disaster recovery, and just simple human errors such as accidentally deleting files off of a server. And those 3 types of backup techniques usually mean different plans. Do we have to plan for catastrophic facility loss, hurricanes, tornadoes, mudslides, and on and on and on? You got ransomware attacks. You got to make sure the backup is ransomware proof. The 6th thing in the NIST CSF, they just added this year in February. Matter of fact, February 2024, they added governance to it. Me and a few others have been talking about administrative controls and governance for quite some time. And now it's become somewhat of a buzzword. Another one, by the way, is boom, which I don't think we get into on this deck. But the concept of boom is a security event, right? Boom. The cyber bomb went off, right? That's when you find out your data is being held for ransom. But getting back to this concept of governance, governance is that management and leadership actions, the decisions, it's the policies and procedures of your entire business. It's unrelated to IT and cybersecurity. I mean, you got dozens, if not hundreds, of different policies and procedures. Many of those may not even be written down. Everyone just knows what it is. Everyone knows who has the keys to the building. Everyone knows what hours you're open. These are policies and procedures, and that, therefore, is governance. One of the other things that governance is responsible for is deployment, configuration, monitoring, response, and all 5 of these other parts of the NIST cybersecurity framework. It simply doesn't work well without key governance. And that's why governance touches on all 5 of those things. I used to call them administrative controls, but governance implies more. It's that leadership decision to say we need better cybersecurity defense because an attack could be fatal. That's a leadership decision right now. Management may say, well, we don't really need to afford that, nobody wants to attack us. We're too small. Leadership's making that decision right now. The early days of the PC, it was leadership investing in these $10,000 PCs without a hard drive in them, and you had to send people off to get training, and it could only do one thing at a time. That was a leadership visionary decision to invest in personal computers for business. And probably there was only 1 or 2 in the whole company on the smaller organizations. Now that's a no-brainer. Everyone knows computers are required to make the company more efficient, productive, and so on and so on. It's an investment. Well, we haven't gotten to that stage yet when it comes to cybersecurity. Now, MSSPs or security consultants have differing methodologies. Our own 3-pillar methodology brings the concepts of NIST together with other thoughts and ideas that we've been practicing for years. You're going to see this across different types of security companies. But it's composed of 3 pillars: the aforementioned governance, your investment in IT infrastructure, and what does your cybersecurity defense systems look like? And this methodology, or our assessments, when we're doing that first step in the NIST CSF, when we see some of these that are missing, such as multi-factor authentication, password manager, awareness training, that makes the company score lower. Just the very fact that you've never done an assessment means you're at risk. You have a higher risk than what you really should have. Software patching management. If you don't patch your systems, they're going to get compromised. The second pillar is IT infrastructure. And yeah, some of these crossover, disaster recovery or incident response plans. Firewalls are a security feature, to be sure. But we assess it based upon the successfulness of that return on investment in your IT infrastructure. That's what IT's purpose is. Cybersecurity's purpose is security. And then finally, governance. And these are just some of the things that go into governance. Budgeting and benchmarking are questions or topics we're always talking about. We know the research tells us that in a professional services firm, such as a law firm or an accounting firm, about $5,700 a year per person should be spent on all things cybersecurity and all things IT infrastructure. That means the servers, the PCs, the laptops, firewalls, the software, all of that. That's about the number. And if you're spending $1,000 per user per year, why in the world is your firm running as well as it could? I promise you it's not secure, and I would be shocked if you're getting a very good return on investment on your IT infrastructure. That benchmark is what gives you guidance, and that guides the budget. And for some of our clients, even larger ones, oh, well, we can't increase the budget that much. That's okay. Just stick it on the to-do list for next year's budget. We'll prioritize around where's the best bang for the buck on the IT infrastructure, and what's the most secure thing you absolutely have to do right now. We can adapt. Sometimes it takes years to get all of this stuff rolled out, not just due to budget recommendations, but sometimes external stuff. Maybe it's a compliance issue. You don't have to be compliant for this until next year. Let's put it off. Maybe, maybe not. There's a reason why they put it on the compliance regulations. It's not just to make you buy it, it's to make you safer or your IT infrastructure more effective. So once again, just to kind of review, this is the way these two classes of companies, many of you, if not most of you, probably work with, because we're seeing so many other companies co-managing this stuff. You know, another thing about IT experts is the good ones know that they are probably not security specialists. Remember the hospital example? You know, neurologists, neurosurgeons. That's kind of the best analogy I can think of. And we work with a lot of IT departments. I mean, a lot of them, especially in cybersecurity. But they realize it's not their strong point, or they would rather have a third party advise them and accept some of the risk from a consulting collaboration standpoint, and especially to monitor 24/7 SOCs or security operations centers and those type of things. They don't want to staff up. It's cheaper in many cases to outsource that. Now I want to give you one more thing. I want you, this will, if I can get this to work, you guys are going to be better prepared to really start increasing your security. And this is something that Booz Allen started a couple of years ago, maybe 3 now. And Colonial Pipeline learned the hard way that they had to have a chief information security officer. But Booz Allen said it best. They said, you don't want to add cybersecurity defense to your existing IT infrastructure. You need to flip it on its head. And you need to think security first. Security's job one. Then IT. This change in thinking will hopefully result in you understanding that these security practices and things like multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication, they're not hassles. You just have to do them, just like buckling up a seatbelt in your car. It's in your best interest to implement multi-factor authentication wherever you can. That's another pearl. You can turn it, you'd be shocked at the number of places, Amazon, Facebook. You can turn it on in a lot of places, more and more every day. Just got to use it. So you want to put that security officer or whoever's in charge on your side. Somebody's going to be there to help guide the consultant with the business objectives and the risk and the budgets and all of these administrative tasks and leadership and management decisions. Put security first, because some of the tactics and techniques and procedures are going to be a little bit of a hassle, but you got to get over that. Plug IT back into a job number one security environment. Defense in depth, best in class tools, policies, procedures to protect your firm. Then you can do the best in class IT infrastructure. You know, go put your data center in a switch facility, which is arguably the best data centers in the world. Then you can do that. Oh, incidentally, any of you that have a virtualized environment where your desktops are in the cloud, everything's in the cloud, and you've been told that you don't have to worry about security because it's all in the cloud, that's not true either. The minute you start putting software in the cloud, it becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. Amazon infrastructure, AWS, as it exists, is almost bulletproof security. But that's not the problem. The problem is Microsoft Word, Excel, Microsoft Windows, Slack, Teams, on and on, Zoom, all of these other things have software vulnerabilities. And they're just as prone to be hacked and you suffer a ransomware attack as you would be if everything was inside the building. The risks are different, but either environment is vulnerable. One is not better than the other. We're pretty much agnostic. We provide cloud services to those clients where it fulfills their needs. And we do on-prem service for those that it fulfills their needs. So even if you're supplementing an internal staff, they've got to understand that security needs to be job one, and that's got to come from the top down. If leadership, the CEO, the president, the owner of the company doesn't buy into it, your risk is going to be higher than it should be. This has got to be a part of your culture. It's got to be baked into the culture where people quit sharing passwords and doing other things that is counterproductive to a good security environment. And there's many of them. This is our contact info.